I stood in the wings of the auditorium stage, my hands trembling as I held the acceptance letter from Juilliard. Through the gap in the curtain, I could see 2,000 people filling the seats: parents, siblings, friends, all dressed in their finest, cameras ready to capture this moment. The moment their children would graduate as valedictorians, salutatorians, honor students. The moment I would be named recipient of the Presidential Scholars Award, the highest honor in the entire state, along with a full scholarship to the most prestigious performing arts school in the country. I scanned the crowd one more time, even though I knew. I'd known for weeks. They weren't coming. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. Cassie's recital ran long. We'll try to catch the end. Cassie, always Cassie. My younger sister's middle school dance recital, the third one this month, was more important than my high school graduation. I stared at the message, feeling nothing. Not hurt, not anger, not even disappointment. Just a hollow sort of acknowledgement, like checking off an item on a list I'd been keeping for 18 years. The principal was calling my name. I slipped my phone into my pocket and walked onto that stage with my head high, my shoulders back, and a smile that had nothing to do with them and everything to do with me. The spotlight was blinding, the applause was deafening, and in the front row of the reserved family section, 4 seats sat empty, the ones marked Family of Isabella Chen. They'd missed my first day of school 18 years ago. It seemed fitting they'd miss my last, but I hadn't told them it was happening, and that made all the difference. My earliest memory is of being 4 years old, sitting on the front steps of our house in my new purple backpack, waiting. Mom had promised, she'd take me to my first day of pre-kindergarten. I'd been so excited I'd woken up at 5 in the morning, gotten dressed by myself, braided my own hair in a crooked, uneven plait that I was so proud of. At 7:45, Mom emerged from the house, but she wasn't alone. She was carrying newborn Cassie, who was screaming. Isabella, honey, I'm so sorry. Your sister's been up all night. Daddy's going to take you instead. Except Dad was on a work call. He didn't even look up as Mom made the promise on his behalf. By the time his conference ended at 9:30, I'd missed the entire first morning of school. The introductions, the tour, the making of first friends, the special welcome circle where each kid got to share something about themselves. When he finally dropped me off, the teacher, Miss Garcia, looked at me with such pity. The other children had already formed their little groups, their first day bonds. I spent recess sitting alone on the swing, watching them play. It's fine, I told myself. Tomorrow will be better. But the pattern had already been set. Cassie had colic. Cassie was teething. Cassie had a recital. Cassie made the soccer team. Cassie. And 3 years later, when my brother Marcus was born, it became a symphony of excuses with 2 movements instead of 1. Second grade, I won the school spelling bee. Mom and Dad were at Cassie's parent-teacher conference. 4th grade, I got the lead in the school play. They came to Cassie's performance as a background butterfly in her dance recital instead. 6th grade, I placed first in the regional science fair. They were celebrating Marcus's first Little League game where he sat on the bench the entire time. It wasn't that they were cruel. They never hit me, never screamed, never called me names. It was worse than that. It was absence. It was the systematic erasure of my existence in favor of my siblings. Every achievement I earned was met with a distracted, "That's nice, honey," before the conversation pivoted to whatever Cassie or Marcus needed next. Money was the same way. Cassie needed new dance shoes, $200 bought without question. Marcus needed hockey equipment, $500 purchased immediately. I needed books for the accelerated reading program. Can't you get them from the library? I needed a graphing calculator for advanced mathematics. Use the schools. I needed professional sheet music for piano. Just print it from the internet. By the time I was in middle school, I'd learned to need nothing. I babysat for neighbors, walked dogs, did yard work. Every penny I earned went into a shoebox under my bed because I didn't even have a bank account. Mom said she'd take me to open one, but she never did. There was always something more important. The only time they paid attention to me was when my achievements reflected well on them. When I won the state essay competition in 8th grade, suddenly they were so proud, telling all their friends about their gifted daughter. but they hadn't read the essay. They didn't know I'd written about loneliness, about feeling invisible in a crowded house. They displayed the trophy on the mantel for a week before moving it to make room for Cassie's participation ribbons. I learned to disappear. I learned to be small. I learned that my pain didn't matter and my joy was a burden. So I stopped sharing both. High school was supposed to be different. Freshman year, I decided I would make them see me. I joined every club, tried out for every team, entered every competition. I stayed up until 2 in the morning studying, woke up at 5 to practice piano before school, spent my weekends volunteering and building the kind of resume that would make them finally notice. I made honor roll every quarter. They forgot to sign the papers. I won the school's Young Artist Award. They missed the ceremony for Marcus's baseball practice. I was inducted into the National Honor Society. They had to leave early to pick up Cassie from a friend's house. The breaking point came halfway through sophomore year. I'd been taking piano lessons since I was 7, lessons I paid for myself with babysitting money, walking 3 miles each way to Mrs. Chen's house every Tuesday and Thursday. Mrs. Chen was elderly, patient, and the first person who ever treated my music like it mattered. She'd been preparing me for the state youth piano competition, a prestigious event that could open doors to scholarships, summer programs, connections. The competition was on a Saturday in March. I'd prepared for 6 months. I'd memorized Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor, a piece so technically difficult that Mrs. Chen said if I could play it well, I could play anything. My fingers bled from practicing. I dreamed in chord progressions. 3 days before the competition, I reminded Mom and Dad at dinner. "This Saturday," I said, my voice small and hopeful despite everything. "The piano competition. It starts at 2. Dad looked up from his phone. "This Saturday? That's Marcus's tournament." "The one in Baltimore," Mom added. "We'll be gone all day." My hands clenched in my lap. "I told you about this 6 months ago. I've reminded you every week." "Well, we can't be in 2 places at once, Isabella." Mom's voice had that edge of exhaustion it always got when I asked for anything. "Marcus's team is counting on us. We're the snack parents." "The snack parents," I repeated numbly. "Don't be selfish," Dad said, returning his attention to his phone. "Your brother needs support." "What about what I need?" The words came out louder than I'd intended. They all stared at me. Mom, Dad, even Cassie and Marcus looked up from their respective phones and tablets. "What's gotten into you?" Mom asked. "I need you." My voice cracked. "Just once. Just this one time, I need you to choose me." "This is ridiculous." Dad stood up from the table. "You're 16 years old. You don't need us there." "You're right," I heard myself say. "I don't." Something in my voice must have sounded final because Mom frowned. "Isabella, may I be excused?" I didn't wait for permission. I went upstairs, closed my door, and called Mrs. Chen. "I need a favor," I said when she answered. "A big one." That Saturday, Mrs. Chen picked me up at 1 o'clock. She'd brought her son, David, and his wife, Rachel, and their 2 kids. They all wore shirts with my name on them. Team Isabella, in iron-on letters. David had made a poster. The kids had drawn pictures of pianos and music notes. "Every performer needs a cheering section," Mrs. Chen said, squeezing my hand. I played that Rachmaninoff like my life depended on it. Every note was perfect. Every crescendo and diminuendo was exactly as the composer intended. When I finished, the silence lasted 3 heartbeats before the auditorium erupted in applause. The judges were wiping their eyes. I took first place. A full scholarship to a summer intensive program at the Boston Conservatory. A feature in the State Arts magazine. Congratulations from the governor. When I got home at 9 that night, still wearing my competition dress, the trophy in my hands, my parents were watching TV in the living room. "How was Marcus's tournament?" I asked. "They lost in the semifinals," Mom said without looking up. "How was your thing?" "Fine." I went upstairs and put the trophy in my closet. They never asked to see it. That night, lying in bed, I made a decision. I was done. Done trying. Done hoping. Done breaking my own heart over and over with the expectation that they might care. From that moment on, they wouldn't just miss my milestones, they wouldn't even know they existed. The decision brought a strange sort of peace. If you expect nothing, you can't be disappointed. If you tell them nothing, they can't ruin it. I became a ghost in my own house, I woke up early before anyone else was awake. I made my breakfast, packed my lunch, left for school. I stayed late, studying in the library, practicing in the music room, volunteering at the community center. I came home after dinner, said I'd eaten with friends, went to my room. On weekends, I worked my part-time job at the bookstore, babysat, gave piano lessons to little kids in the neighborhood. My parents barely noticed the change. If anything, they seemed relieved. One less child to manage, one less schedule to coordinate. Mrs. Chen noticed. "You're here even more than usual," she observed one Tuesday, setting out tea and cookies after my lesson. "I like it here." She studied me with those wise, dark eyes that seemed to see everything. "Your parents still don't come." I shook my head. "Then I'll come to everything," she said simply. "And David and Rachel and the children. You tell me when and where, and we'll be there." I started crying, and she held me while I sobbed into her shoulder. This tiny elderly woman who was more family to me than my own blood. The Chens became my family. They came to my National Honor Society induction. They framed my honor roll certificates. They displayed my piano competition trophy in their living room. When I got my driver's license, David taught me to drive because my parents were too busy. When I needed a dress for the junior prom, not that I went, but I wanted one anyway, Rachel took me shopping and they insisted on paying for it. "You spend too much on me," I protested. "We spend on family," Mrs. Chen said firmly, "and your family now." I'd found my loophole, my unfair advantage. Not magic, not foreknowledge, not luck. Just people who saw me, really saw me. And once I had that, once I knew what it felt like to be valued, everything changed. I threw myself into school with renewed energy, but this time it wasn't to get my parents' attention. It was for me. For the future I was building brick by brick in secret. Junior year, I started applying to every scholarship I could find. I wrote essays late into the night. I collected recommendation letters from teachers who actually knew my name, my dreams, my work ethic. I researched programs and internships and opportunities. Mrs. Chen helped me set up a bank account, my first one, and I started saving seriously. I got a job at an upscale restaurant as a hostess. The tips were excellent, and I was good at it, smiling at people, making them feel welcome, remembering their preferences. The kind of attention I'd always craved, I gave to strangers, and they rewarded me for it. By the end of junior year, I had $8,000 saved. I'd won 3 more piano competitions. I'd been nominated for the Presidential Scholars Program. I'd started composing my own music, pieces that were getting attention from professors at conservatories across the country. And my parents knew none of it. "How's school?" Mom would ask occasionally at dinner. "Fine." "Making good grades?" Yes. That was the extent of our conversations. They didn't ask about my classes. They didn't ask about my friends. They didn't ask about my plans for college. They assumed I'd go to the local state school, commute from home, study something practical. They had no idea I was applying to Juilliard, the Curtis Institute, the New England Conservatory. They had no idea I was corresponding with professors and composers. They had no idea that the quiet daughter who'd learned to disappear was building something extraordinary in the shadows. Senior year began, and the applications went out. By October, I'd already been accepted to 3 prestigious music programs with the full scholarships. By November, I'd received early acceptance to Juilliard. I didn't tell them. In December, I was notified that I'd been selected as a Presidential Scholar semifinalist, one of 600 students nationally. The letter came with a list of requirements: essays, portfolios, interviews. The final ceremony would be in Washington, D.C., with the president. I didn't tell them. In January, Mrs. Chen had a stroke. I got the call while I was at school. David sounded wrecked on the phone. "She's asking for you," he said. "Can you come?" I left school immediately. At the hospital, Mrs. Chen was small and frail in the bed, but her eyes were alert. She reached for my hand with the one that still worked. "My girl," she whispered, "I'm here. Promise me something. Anything. Don't let this stop you. Don't let anything stop you. You're going to do remarkable things, Isabella. Promise me you'll let yourself shine." I was crying again. "I promise." She squeezed my hand. "And promise me you'll invite me to your graduation. Front row. I want to see it." "Front row," I agreed. "I promise." She recovered slowly. The stroke had affected her mobility, but her mind was sharp as ever. She couldn't teach piano anymore, but she could still listen. I played for her every week in the nursing home where she was recovering. Everything I was working on, every new composition, every piece I planned to perform. Beautiful, she'd say, tears streaming down her face. So beautiful. My parents never asked where I went on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. They never asked about Mrs. Chen. When I mentioned her stroke at dinner, Mom said, "Oh, that's too bad," and went back to discussing Cassie's upcoming dance showcase. By March, I'd been named a Presidential Scholar finalist. 20 students in the state, 600 nationally, 161 who would be chosen. The announcement ceremony would be in April, followed by the National Recognition Program in June in Washington, D.C. The state ceremony was scheduled for the same day as Marcus's middle school science fair. I didn't tell them there was a conflict because I didn't tell them about the ceremony at all. April came. I put on my best dress. The prom dress Rachel had bought me, which I'd never worn. I did my makeup carefully. David and Rachel picked me up. "Your parents really aren't coming?" Rachel asked gently. "They have other plans." She and David exchanged a look but didn't push. Mrs. Chen was there in her wheelchair, David pushing her carefully to the front row of reserved seating. The nursing home had given her permission to attend for the day. She wore her finest jewelry and a purple dress because she remembered purple was my favorite color. When they called my name, Isabella Chen, Presidential Scholar in the Arts, the Chens cheered so loudly that people turned to look. Mrs. Chen was crying and clapping with her good hand. David was whistling. Rachel was holding up her phone, recording every second. After the ceremony, as we posed for photos, one of the event coordinators approached me. "Will your parents be joining us for photos?" "They couldn't make it," I said smoothly, "but this is my family." I stood between Mrs. Chen's wheelchair and David and Rachel, and we took photo after photo, with the governor, with the senators, with the other scholars, with the program directors. "I'm so proud of you," Mrs. Chen whispered as we were leaving. "Your real family is so proud of you." "I know," I said, hugging her carefully. "I love you." "I love you too, my girl." That night, I came home to find my parents watching TV again. Cassie was at a friend's house. Marcus was in his room. "How was Marcus's science fair?" I asked. "He got an honorable mention," Dad said. "We're very proud." "That's great." I went upstairs. In my room, I looked at the photos on my phone, me shaking hands with the governor, me holding my scholar certificate, me with my real family. I posted one on my social media with a simple caption, "Presidential Scholar in the Arts, dreams do come true." By morning, it had 500 likes and dozens of congratulatory comments. 3 of my teachers shared it. The school principal commented, the mayor commented. My parents never saw it. They didn't follow my social media. They didn't know my handles. They lived in the same house, but we existed in parallel universes. The final selection was announced in May. I was one of 161 students chosen nationally, the only one in our region. It came with a trip to Washington, D.C., meetings with government leaders, a ceremony at the Kennedy Center. I didn't tell them. What I did tell them, finally, was that I needed information for college applications. "Oh, good," Mom said, looking up from her laptop where she was ordering something for Cassie. "We were thinking you'd go to state, save money on room and board." "I'm not going to state." They both looked at me. It might have been the first time in months they'd actually looked at me. "What do you mean?" Dad asked. "I'm going to Juilliard." Silence. "Don't be ridiculous," Mom finally said. "That's in New York. We can't afford that." "I have a full scholarship." More silence. "Since when?" Dad demanded. "Since November." "Why didn't you tell us?" Mom's voice was rising. "This is the kind of thing you discuss with your parents." I stared at her, and something must have shown in my face because she stopped talking. "Like I discussed my first day of pre-K with you?" I asked quietly. "Or my spelling bee, or my school play, or my science fair, or my piano competitions, or my National Honor Society induction, or being named a presidential scholar?" "What are you talking about?" Dad looked genuinely confused. "You don't even know, do you?" I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my own ears. "You have no idea what I've done, what I've achieved. Because you never asked. You never came. You never cared." "That's not fair," Mom protested. "We've always supported you." Supported me? I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my photo gallery. Here's my piano competition win, first place state level. You were at Marcus's baseball practice. Here's my National Honor Society induction. You left early for Cassie's dance carpool. Here's me being named a presidential scholar, one of 161 students in the entire country. You were at Marcus's science fair where he got an honorable mention. I kept scrolling, kept showing them photo after photo. Mrs. Chen and her family and every single one, cheering me on, celebrating my victories, being there. Who are these people? Dad asked. My piano teacher and her family. The people who've shown up for every single thing you missed. The people who actually care about me. We care about you, Mom said, but her voice was weak. No, I said. You don't. You care about the idea of me. The convenient daughter who doesn't make demands. But you don't know me. You don't know what I love or what I dream about or what I've accomplished. And you know what? That's fine. Because I don't need you to know anymore. Isabella, Dad started. I'm graduating in 4 weeks, I said. The ceremony is on June 5th at 2 o'clock. I'm giving the valedictorian speech. I'll be receiving the Presidential Scholar Award. After that, I'm going to Washington, D.C. for a week for the National Recognition Program. Then I'm spending the summer at the Boston Conservatory on scholarship. In August, I moved to New York. They stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. You're valedictorian? Mom whispered. #1 in my class. Have been since sophomore year. How did we not know that? Dad asked. Because you never asked. Because you never came to a single parent-teacher conference that wasn't for Cassie or Marcus. Because you've spent 18 years not knowing anything about me and I got tired of trying to make you care. I turned to go back to my room, then paused. Oh, and I need my birth certificate and social security card for college registration. We'll talk about this, Mom said, finding her voice. About Juilliard, about New York. You're only 18, and... We won't talk about it, I interrupted. It's done, it's decided. I'm just informing you as a courtesy because I legally need documents from you. But my decisions are my own, and they have been for a long time. I went to my room and closed the door. My hands were shaking, but I felt lighter than I had in years. I'd finally said it. Finally told them what I'd been holding inside since I was 4 years old, waiting on those front steps. The next week was tense. Mom kept trying to have conversations where she attempted to reassert parental authority. Dad wanted to discuss my plans, as if he had any say. Cassie was confused. She'd grown up thinking I was just the quiet sister who didn't do much. Marcus didn't even seem to notice anything was different, but I was done explaining, done justifying, done seeking their approval or understanding. I focused on finals, on my valedictorian speech, on preparing for graduation. Mrs. Chen was being discharged from the nursing home, well enough to come home with in-home care. She'd be at graduation. The Chens had already bought their tickets, already coordinated with the school to ensure she could access the auditorium in her wheelchair. The school kept trying to coordinate with my parents for graduation. Seating, tickets, the reception afterward. I finally had to tell my counselor that my parents might not be able to attend. I have other family coming, I assured her. I won't be alone. She looked at me with that same pity I'd seen on Miss Garcia's face on my first day of pre-K, and I hated it. But I smiled and changed the subject. 3 days before graduation, I came home to find both parents waiting in the living room. They'd called a family meeting. We've been talking, Mom said, and we realized we may have been distracted with everything, with your siblings. May have been, I repeated. We want to make it up to you, Dad added. We're canceling our plans. We'll all come to your graduation. Me, your mother, Cassie, and Marcus. I looked at them both. Cassie was on the couch checking her phone, clearly resenting having her schedule disrupted. Marcus was in the corner with his gaming device, not even listening. Don't, I said. Mom blinked. Don't what? Don't come. Isabella, don't be childish, Dad said. We're trying here. You're trying now, I agreed, after 18 years. After I've already achieved everything I set out to achieve. After I've already found people who actually care about me. You're trying now because it finally occurred to you that you might look bad, that people might ask questions, that my success reflects on you. That's not true, Mom protested. Isn't it? Tell me right now, what's my GPA? What piece am I performing for my Juilliard audition? What's the topic of my valedictorian speech? What's my plan for my first year in New York? Silence. You don't know, I said softly. And that's fine. But don't come to my graduation pretending you were there for the journey. You get the results without doing the work. You're being incredibly ungrateful, Dad's voice hardened. After everything we've provided for you. Everything, I laughed. You want to talk about providing? Let's talk about it. You know how I paid for piano lessons since I was 7? Babysitting. You know how I bought my own books, my own supplies, my own clothes since middle school? Part-time jobs. You know who taught me to drive? David Chen. You know who helped me open my first bank account? Mrs. Chen. You know who came to every single event, every single performance, every single achievement ceremony? The Chens, not you. Never you. We were raising 2 other children. Mom was getting angry now. We couldn't be everywhere at once. You were never anywhere for me, I corrected. Not once. Not even by accident. Because it wasn't about being everywhere. It was about being somewhere for me. Just once. Just one time. Choosing me over Cassie's recital or Marcus's practice. Your sister and brother needed us, Dad said. And I didn't? My voice cracked despite my best efforts. I needed you too. I needed you to show up to my first day of school, to read the essays I wrote, to hear me play piano, to see me win, to be proud of me, to know me, but you never did, and now it's too late. It's not too late. Mom reached for me, but I stepped back. We can fix this. No, I said. You can't, because I'm done. I'm done hoping. I'm done hurting. I'm done being disappointed. In 4 days, I'm graduating. Then I'm leaving for DC, then Boston, then New York. And you can either accept that or not, but it doesn't change anything. If you walk away from this family, Dad started, his voice threatening. I'm not walking away, I interrupted. I left years ago. You just never noticed. I went to my room. An hour later, there was a knock on my door. It was Cassie. Can I come in? I was surprised, but opened the door. She'd never voluntarily sought me out before. She sat on my bed, looking uncomfortable. I didn't know, she said finally, about any of it. The competitions, the awards, the scholarship. Mom and Dad never said anything. They didn't know either. She trailed off. That's messed up. I sat down at my desk chair. Yeah. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I was always so annoyed when they made everything about me. Yeah, I wanted them at my recitals, but after a while it felt like too much, like they were living through me or something. I never thought about what it meant for you. You were a kid, I said. It wasn't your fault. But I'm not a kid anymore, she looked at me. I'm 14. I'm old enough to have noticed, to have asked, to have cared, and I didn't know what to say to that. Are you really leaving? She asked. Like really leaving? Yes. For good. I don't know, I said honestly. I know I need space. I need to build a life that's mine, where I'm not invisible. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I get it, and I'm sorry for all of it. After she left, I sat in the dark for a long time, thinking about family and blood and choice. Cassie's apology meant something, but it didn't change the fundamental truth. I'd raised myself. I'd built myself. And the family that mattered, my real family, was the one I'd chosen. Graduation day arrived. I woke up at 5, did my makeup with care, fixed my hair in an elaborate updo that Rachel had taught me how to do. I put on my white dress under my gown, the one I'd bought with my own money, the one that made me feel beautiful and powerful and ready. Mrs. Chen had texted me the night before. Front row, as promised. Can't wait to see you shine. I got to the school early for the graduation rehearsal and final preparations. Other students were surrounded by family taking photos. I helped the AV crew set up the sound system, checked my speech one more time, made small talk with teachers. My phone buzzed. Mom, what time should we be there? I stared at the message. She still didn't get it. After everything, she still thought showing up would fix everything. Me, don't come. Mom, Isabella, don't be ridiculous. We're your parents. We're coming to your graduation. Me, I don't want you there. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Then, We'll be there. You can't stop us. I turned my phone off. Fine. Let them come. It wouldn't change anything. They were spectators now, not participants. The seats marked for my family would have the Chens in them, the people who'd earned their place. My parents could sit wherever they wanted. At 1 o'clock, students started lining up in alphabetical order. I took my place at the front. Chen, Isabella, first in the class. Behind me, other students were nervous, excited, scared. I felt calm. This was my moment, and no one could take it from me. At 1:30, we processed into the auditorium. The orchestra played Pomp and Circumstance. 2,000 people stood. And there, in the front row of the family section, were David and Rachel and their 2 kids. And Mrs. Chen in her wheelchair, in her purple dress, clutching a bouquet of flowers, crying already. I smiled at her and she beamed back, proud and fierce, and there, the ceremony began. Speeches from the principal, from the class president, from the salutatorian. And then my name was called. Our valedictorian, Isabella Chen, will now deliver her address. I walked to the podium, my speech cards in hand, though I'd memorized every word. I looked out at the sea of faces. Somewhere in that crowd were my parents. But in the front row were the people who mattered. I began to speak. 4 years ago, I walked into this building as a scared freshman who didn't think she deserved to take up space. Today, I stand before you as proof that we become who we choose to become, regardless of where we start. Success isn't measured by the people who celebrate us. It's measured by the person we become when no one is watching. It's measured by the late nights we endure, the challenges we overcome, the times we choose to keep going when it would be easier to give up. I've learned that family isn't always blood. Family is the people who show up, who believe in you, who see your potential and refuse to let you settle for less. Family is the people who celebrate your victories like they're their own, who catch you when you fall, who push you to reach higher than you ever thought possible. To my teachers, thank you for seeing me, for challenging me, for refusing to let me hide in the shadows. To my classmates, thank you for 4 years of friendship, competition, and growth. You made me better. And to my family, you know who you are. Thank you for giving me something to strive for. Thank you for showing me what love looks like. Thank you for being there for every moment that mattered. We're all leaving here today to go different places, to pursue different dreams. Some of us know exactly where we're going. Some of us are figuring it out. But we're all walking out of here with the same truth. We are enough. We have always been enough. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve a place in our story. So here's to new beginnings, to the families we choose, to the dreams we pursue, to the people we're becoming, to showing up for ourselves even when no one else does, and to never forgetting that our worth isn't determined by who shows up to our first day. It's determined by who we are on our last. Congratulations, class of 2025. Let's go show the world what we're made of. The applause was thunderous. I saw Mrs. Chen sobbing openly, David and Rachel on their feet cheering. I saw teachers wiping their eyes. I saw my classmates standing, some crying, some grinning. And then I saw them. In the back, standing near the door, Mom, Dad, Cassie, and Marcus. Mom's hand was over her mouth. Dad looked stricken. Even Cassie was crying, and they'd understood. Finally. Too late, but they'd understood. The ceremony continued. Awards were handed out. I received the Presidential Scholar Award from the governor himself. I received the music department's highest honor. I received the Principal's Leadership Award. Every time I walked across that stage, Mrs. Chen cheered like I'd won the lottery. After the ceremony, there was a reception in the courtyard. I was surrounded immediately by teachers wanting to take photos, by classmates wanting to say goodbye, by parents of other students congratulating me. Mrs. Chen held court in her wheelchair, telling everyone who would listen about her Isabella and all her achievements. I was taking a photo with my AP English teacher when I felt someone touch my arm. I turned to find my mother. Isabella, her voice was thick with tears. Your speech. Excuse me, I said to my teacher, then turned back to my mother. What do you want? We're so sorry. She was crying now, mascara running down her face. We didn't realize we should have been there for all of it. Yes, I agreed. You should have. Can we talk, please? I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing. Not anger, not hurt, just a distant kind of pity. There's nothing to talk about, I said. You made your choices for 18 years. I've made mine. Don't say that. Dad appeared beside her, looking older than I'd ever seen him. You're our daughter. We love you. Do you? I asked. What do you love about me? What's my favorite color? My favorite food? What do I want to do with my life? What makes me happy? What scares me? They stared at me, silent. You love the idea of me, I said. The convenient daughter, the one who didn't complain. But you don't know me, and that's the saddest part. You never tried to. We're trying now. Mom reached for me again. Please, Isabella, give us a chance. I gave you 18 years of chances, I said. Every time I told you about an event, every time I won something, every time I needed you, those were all chances. You used them to choose Cassie and Marcus instead. We can make it up to you, Dad insisted. We'll come visit you in New York. We'll be better. Just don't cut us out. I looked past them to where the Chens were waiting, giving me space but ready to intervene if I needed them. Mrs. Chen caught my eye and nodded, a small gesture of support. I'm not cutting you out, I told my parents. You were never in. But here's what I'll do. I'll call on holidays. I'll send updates when something major happens. I'll be civil at family gatherings if I decide to come. But I won't pretend we're close. I won't pretend those 18 years didn't happen. And I won't give you credit for achievements you had no part in. That's it? Mom whispered. That's all we get? That's more than you gave me, I said softly. And it's all I have to offer. I walked away from them toward the Chens. David wrapped me in a hug. Rachel kissed my forehead. The kids hung on my arms, chattering excitedly about the ceremony. And Mrs. Chen took my hand with her good one, tears still streaming down her face. So proud, she whispered. So proud. Thank you for coming, I said. Thank you for always coming. Always, she promised. Always. We took photos, hundreds of them. Me with Mrs. Chen. Me with David and Rachel and the kids. Me with teachers. Me with friends. Me with my diploma and my awards and my medals. Photos of a girl who'd learned to be her own champion, surrounded by the family she'd chosen. My parents watched from a distance. I saw them taking photos of me on their phones, probably their first photos of me in years. I saw Cassie crying, Marcus looking confused. I saw them trying to approach several times but always stopping, maybe finally understanding that they'd lost the right to be in these moments. As the sun set and the reception wound down, I gathered my things. Tomorrow, I'd leave for Washington, D.C. Next week, I'd go to Boston. In August, I'd move to New York. My whole life was ahead of me, bright and shining, and mine. Ready? David asked, offering me his arm. Ready, I said. As we walked to the car, I looked back one last time. My parents were standing by the auditorium doors, looking lost and small. For a moment, just a moment, I felt something like grief. Not for what we were, but for what we could have been. Then I turned around and didn't look back again. The summer passed in a blur of music and opportunity. Washington, D.C. was incredible. I met other presidential scholars from across the country, attended events at the White House, networked with artists and leaders and visionaries. I performed at the Kennedy Center. The president shook my hand and congratulated me on my achievements. Boston Conservatory was intensive and challenging and everything I'd hoped for. I practiced 8 hours a day, studied theory and composition, worked with professors who pushed me to new heights. I wrote 3 new compositions. I performed in showcase concerts. I made friends with other musicians who understood the language of dedication and passion. Through it all, the Chens called and texted and video chatted. Mrs. Chen wanted to hear about everything, every piece I learned, every person I met, every experience I had. David and Rachel sent care packages. The kids sent drawings. My parents sent a few texts. How's DC? Glad Boston is going well. Generic, surface level, the kind of messages you'd send to a distant acquaintance. I responded politely and moved on. In August, David drove me to New York. He helped me move into my dorm at Juilliard, carried boxes up 3 flights of stairs, set up my keyboard, made sure I had everything I needed. You're going to do amazing things here, he said as we stood in my tiny single room, looking out at the city. I'm going to try, I said, and you already have. He hugged me. We're so proud of you, Isabella. We love you. I love you too. After he left, I stood at my window looking out at New York City spread before me. This was it. My new beginning, my new life, everything I'd worked for. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. Good luck at school. We're thinking of you. I typed back, thank you, and put my phone away. First year at Juilliard was brutal. The competition was fierce. The expectations were higher than anything I'd experienced. The workload was crushing. I practiced until my fingers bled, studied until my eyes burned, performed until I thought I'd collapse, and I loved every second of it. I thrived in the pressure. I'd been training for this my whole life, working without support, without encouragement, with nothing but my own determination. Now, finally, I was in a place where everyone worked that hard, where dedication was the baseline, where my achievements were celebrated and my talent was recognized. My professors loved me. I was invited to perform in master classes. I was selected for prestigious showcase concerts. My compositions started getting attention from professional musicians. Mrs. Chen video chatted me every week without fail. Play for me, she'd say, and I would. Whatever I was working on, whatever new piece I'd discovered, whatever composition I was developing. She'd listen with her eyes closed, that same expression of pure joy on her face, and when I finished, she'd say, "Beautiful. You're going to change the world with that music." Thanksgiving came. I was invited to the Chens for dinner. When I walked in, the house smelled like home, like love and acceptance and family. We ate and laughed and told stories. Mrs. Chen sat at the head of the table in her wheelchair, presiding over everything with the quiet authority of a matriarch. "A toast," she said, raising her glass, "to Isabella, our daughter, our pride, our joy. May this year bring you everything you've worked for and more." "To Isabella," everyone echoed. I cried into my mashed potatoes, happy tears this time. My phone rang during dessert. It was my mother. "Happy Thanksgiving, honey," she said when I answered. "We're thinking about you. Wish you could be here." In the background, I could hear Cassie and Marcus arguing about something. Dad was watching football. The TV was too loud. "Thanks," I said. "Happy Thanksgiving to you too." "Will you be home for Christmas?" Mom asked. "It would mean a lot." I looked around the Chen dining room, at the people who'd shown up for me, who'd made space for me, who'd loved me unconditionally. "I'm already home," I said. There was a long pause. Then, "I see. Well, maybe next year." "Maybe," I agreed, knowing I wouldn't. After I hung up, Mrs. Chen caught my eye. "You okay?" "I'm perfect," I said honestly. Winter semester was even more intense than fall. I was preparing for my end-of-year showcase performance. Every first-year student performed, but mine would include one of my original compositions. It was a piece I'd titled First Days and Last, a haunting, complex work that told the story of a girl becoming herself despite everything. I practiced obsessively. My professors were impressed. Other students asked to hear it. Word spread through the music building that something special was being created. The showcase was in April. I invited Mrs. Chen and her family, of course. I also invited some of my teachers from high school, the ones who'd supported me. I invited friends I'd made at Juilliard. I didn't invite my parents, but somehow they found out. 3 days before the performance, my phone rang. It was Dad. "Your high school music teacher posted on social media about your performance," he said without preamble. "We'd like to come." "No," I said. "Isabella, we're still your parents. We have a right—" "You have no rights when it comes to my life," I interrupted. "Not anymore." "Don't be like this," he said, and I could hear the frustration in his voice. "We know we made mistakes, but you're being cruel. You're punishing us." "I'm not punishing you," I said calmly. "I'm protecting myself. There's a difference." "By shutting us out completely? By pretending we don't exist?" "You pretended I didn't exist for 18 years, I reminded him. "I learned from the best." "That's not fair." Wait, life isn't fair, Dad. You taught me that too. Every time you chose Cassie's recital over my competition. Every time you prioritized Marcus's practice over my achievements. Every time you made me feel like I didn't matter. You taught me that life isn't fair and that I had to make my own way, so that's what I'm doing. We want to support you now. I don't need your support now. I needed it then. But I built a life without it, and that life doesn't have room for people who only show up when it's convenient. When will you forgive us?" His voice cracked. I thought about that question for a long moment. I already have, I said finally. I've forgiven you for not being what I needed. I've forgiven myself for hoping you'd change. But forgiveness doesn't mean letting you back in. It just means I'm not angry anymore. So that's it? We just lose you? You never had me to lose, I said softly. You just finally noticed I was gone. I hung up before he could respond. The showcase performance was breathtaking. I played pieces by Chopin and Debussy and Rachmaninoff, technical works that demonstrated my skill. And then I performed First Days and Last. The auditorium was silent as I played. Every note was perfect, every emotion was raw and real. I poured 18 years of loneliness and determination and triumph into that piece. When I finished, the silence lasted 5 full seconds before the applause exploded. Standing ovation, people crying, Mrs. Chen sobbing openly in the front row, my professors on their feet, students shouting "Brava!" After, as people congratulated me, I saw them, standing in the back of the auditorium, having clearly snuck in without tickets. Mom, Dad, and Cassie. They were crying, all 3 of them. They tried to approach me during the reception, but I was surrounded by people, professors wanting to discuss my composition, students wanting to know how I'd achieved that particular technique, music industry professionals handing me business cards and talking about opportunities. By the time the crowd cleared, they were gone. But Mom had left a note with one of the ushers. "We heard you," it said. "We finally heard you. We're sorry. We love you. We'll wait as long as it takes." I folded the note and put it in my pocket. Maybe someday I'd believe them. Maybe someday I'd want to try. But not today. Not yet. Possibly not ever. Because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. You can't build a foundation on people who were never there. You can only build on solid ground, on people who show up, on love that's proven through action rather than words. I had that now. I had the Chens. I had my music. I had my future. I had myself. And that was enough. The rest of my first year at Juilliard passed in a symphony of achievement. My composition, First Days and Last, was selected to be performed by the Advanced Orchestra. I was invited to collaborate with graduate students on a new work. I received an internship with a prestigious composer for the summer. Mrs. Chen's health stabilized. She still needed the wheelchair, but her spirit was as fierce as ever. We video chatted 3 times a week now instead of once. She wanted to hear everything, every class, every practice session, every small victory. When I told her about the orchestra performing my piece, she cried for 10 minutes straight. "I wish I could be there," she said. "I'll record it for you," I promised, every second. "It's not the same as being there in person." "I know," I said softly, "but you're there in my heart. You're in every note I play. You're in that composition. You and David and Rachel and the kids. You're my inspiration." "Oh, my girl," she whispered, "you're going to make me cry again." Summer came. Instead of going back to my parents' house, the place where I'd grown up but never felt at home, I sublet an apartment in Brooklyn with 2 other Juilliard students. I worked my internship during the day, practiced in the evenings, performed at small venues on weekends. New York became home in a way nowhere else ever had. My parents called occasionally. Always brief, always surface level. "How's school? How's the weather? Are you eating enough?" Generic parent questions that felt hollow because they'd never cared about the answers before. Cassie, surprisingly, called more often. She was about to start high school and she had questions about classes, about studying, about managing expectations. We weren't close, but we were finding a kind of cautious friendship. "Mom and Dad ask about you all the time," she told me one day. "Do they?" "Yeah, they're, I don't know, different now. Like they're trying to figure out what they did wrong." "It's too late," I said simply. "Is it?" she asked. "Forever?" I thought about that. I don't know, but it's too late for them to be the parents I needed. That ship sailed years ago. Whether it's too late for something else, I can't answer that yet. "Fair enough," she said. The recording of my orchestral piece went viral online. Someone from the performance had posted it on TikTok and YouTube, and suddenly millions of people were hearing my story told through music. The comments were overwhelming. This made me cry. The emotion in this is unreal. Who is this composer? She's incredible. This tells a whole story without words. Music blogs picked it up. Classical music publications wrote about me. A rising star at Juilliard, the next generation of composers. I did interviews, always carefully avoiding talking about my family drama, focusing instead on the craft, the inspiration, the journey. But people were curious. One interviewer asked directly, "Your piece is called First Days and Last. Is there a story there?" I chose my words carefully. It's about becoming yourself despite circumstances. About the journey from who you were to who you're meant to be. About the people who help you along the way and the people who don't. It sounds deeply personal. All good art is, I said. The video of that interview got 2 million views. My social media followers jumped from a few hundred to over 100,000. Suddenly, people wanted to know my story, my background, my inspiration. I kept it vague. I posted about music, about New York, about opportunities. I posted photos with the Chens, always tagging them as family. People assumed they were my parents, and I didn't correct them. My biological parents must have seen it. They must have realized that I was building a very public life that they weren't part of, that I was succeeding spectacularly, and they were watching from the outside. Mom called after the interview went viral. "Isabella, we saw your video," she said. "Your interview. You were wonderful." "Thank you." "People are asking us about you," she continued. "Friends, neighbors. Everyone wants to know about our talented daughter." "And what do you tell them?" Long pause. "We tell them we're very proud." "Are you? Or are you proud of what I reflect on you?" "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I asked. "You didn't care about my music when it was just me in my room practicing for hours. You didn't care when I won local competitions. You didn't care when I got into Juilliard. But now that other people are paying attention, now you care?" "We always cared," she said weakly. "No," I said. "You always wanted to care. You always meant to care, but you never actually did. And that's the difference." I hung up before she could respond. Sophomore year at Juilliard was even better than the first. I was taking advanced composition courses, working with renowned professors, collaborating with dancers and visual artists and other musicians on cross-disciplinary projects. My music was being performed at venues across New York. I was building a reputation, a career, a name, and through it all, the Chens were there. Not physically present for every performance. Mrs. Chen's health made travel difficult, but present in every way that mattered. Video calls before big performances, care packages during finals, long conversations about art and life and dreams. "You're living the life you were meant to live," Mrs. Chen told me one night. "I knew you would. I knew from the first time you played for me that you were destined for great things." "I couldn't have done it without you," I said. "Yes, you could have," she corrected gently. "You had the talent and the drive. I just made sure you knew you weren't alone." "That's everything," I said. "Being alone was the hardest part." "You're not alone anymore." "No," I agreed. "I'm not." The invitation came in November. The New York Philharmonic wanted to commission an original piece from me. A full orchestral work to be performed in the spring at Lincoln Center. The youngest composer they'd ever commissioned. I called Mrs. Chen immediately, screaming into the phone like a kid. "They want a full piece for Lincoln Center, Mrs. Chen. This is everything." Her laughter was pure joy. "Of course they do. I told you. I always told you. You're going to change the world." I worked on that piece for 4 months. It was the most ambitious thing I'd ever attempted. A 25-minute orchestral work that told the story of transformation, of finding family, of becoming whole. I called it Chosen. The premiere was scheduled for April. This time, I hired a car service to bring Mrs. Chen to New York. She'd never been to the city before, and she was determined to see me perform at Lincoln Center, even if it took every ounce of strength she had. David and Rachel brought her a week early so she could rest before the performance. I gave them a tour of Juilliard, of my favorite practice rooms, of the concert halls where I'd performed. Mrs. Chen wanted to see everything. "This is where my girl became a star," she said, looking around with wonder. "I'm not a star," I protested. "Not yet," she agreed, "but you will be. You already are to us." The night before the premiere, we had dinner at a nice restaurant in Midtown. The Chens, some of my closest friends from Juilliard, two of my favorite professors. It felt like family, my real family, the one I'd built note by note. During dinner, my phone buzzed. A text from Cassie. I know you probably won't read this, but just in case. I saw about your premiere at Lincoln Center. I'm proud of you. We all are. I wish things were different. I wish mom and dad had been better. I wish I'd been better. But I'm glad you're happy. I'm glad you found people who see how amazing you are. You deserve everything good that's happening to you. I stared at the message for a long moment, then showed it to Mrs. Chen. That's kind of her, Mrs. Chen said. Will you respond? Eventually, I said, but not tonight. Tonight is about this, about the people who were always here. The premiere was magical. Lincoln Center was packed. The New York Philharmonic played my piece flawlessly. Every movement told the story I'd lived: the loneliness, the determination, the discovery of chosen family, the triumph. When the final note faded, the silence was profound. Then the applause came. Standing ovation, people shouting, flowers thrown onto the stage. I stood in the wings, shaking, crying, overwhelmed. They called me out for a bow. I walked onto that stage, looked out at the audience, and saw Mrs. Chen in her wheelchair in the special accessible seating section, David and Rachel on either side of her. She was standing, actually standing, supported by David, her weak legs somehow holding her up for this moment. She was crying and clapping and beaming with pride. I blew her a kiss. She caught it and held it to her heart. The reception afterward was a blur of congratulations, of music industry executives handing me cards, of journalists wanting interviews, of other composers telling me I had a brilliant career ahead of me. Through it all, I kept glancing over at Mrs. Chen, making sure she was okay, making sure she knew this was for her. As the crowd thinned, I finally made it over to her. That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard, she said, taking my hands. Thank you for letting me be here for this. Thank you for making me believe I could do this, I said. Thank you for being my family. Always, she whispered. Always and forever. We took photos, dozens of them. Me in my concert dress with Mrs. Chen in her wheelchair. Me with David and Rachel and the kids. Me with my professors. Me with the conductor. Photos of triumph, of joy, of a dream realized. As we were leaving, I saw them, standing near the exit, trying to be inconspicuous. Mom and Dad, they'd come. Without telling me, without an invitation, they'd come. Mom was crying. Dad looked proud and sad and lost all at once. They didn't approach, didn't try to talk to me. They just watched as I celebrated with my real family, as I posed for photos with the Chens, as I lived my moment of triumph. Our eyes met across the lobby. Mom lifted her hand in a small wave. I nodded back, not cold, not warm, just an acknowledgement. They existed, I existed, that was all. Then I turned back to Mrs. Chen, to David and Rachel, to the people who'd earned their place in my joy. Ready to go celebrate? David asked. Ready, I said. As we left Lincoln Center, I didn't look back. The premiere of Chosen changed everything. Record labels reached out, more commissions came in. I was invited to perform at festivals across the country and internationally. Suddenly, at 20 years old, I had a career. I graduated from Juilliard with the highest honors. The Chens came to my graduation. The whole family, even Mrs. Chen, though the trip exhausted her. They cheered louder than anyone when I walked across that stage. When I received my degree, when I was announced as the recipient of the William Schumann Prize, the school's highest honor, my parents sent a card. Congratulations on your graduation. We're proud of you. Love, Mom, Dad, Cassie, and Marcus. I put it in a drawer and didn't think about it again. I moved into my own apartment in Brooklyn after graduation, a small one-bedroom that I furnished slowly with things I loved. My keyboard in the living room, bookshelves filled with scores and theory texts, photos of the Chens on every wall. My career took off. I composed scores for short films. I was commissioned for more orchestral works. My music was performed in venues around the world. I traveled to Paris, to Vienna, to Tokyo, always with my music, always creating. Mrs. Chen's health declined slowly over the next year. She was in and out of the hospital, But every time I visited, every time we video chatted, she wanted to hear about my work, my travels, my life. Tell me everything, she'd say, her voice weaker but her eyes still bright. I want to hear it all. So I would tell her about the commission I'd just received, the performance in Berlin, the collaboration with a famous violinist. And she would listen with that same expression of pure joy, proud and fierce in there. You're living your dream, she said one day. You're everything I knew you would be. Because of you, I said, holding her hand. Because you believed in me when no one else did. No, she corrected gently. Because you believed in yourself. I just reminded you. She passed away on a Tuesday morning in October. David called me at 6 a.m., his voice broken. She's gone, he said. She went peacefully in her sleep. She loved you. Her last words yesterday were about you. How proud she was. I sat on my apartment floor and cried for hours. Not just for Mrs. Chen, but for everything she'd been to me. My teacher, my champion, my mother in every way that mattered. The funeral was beautiful. Hundreds of people came. Former students, family, friends, neighbors. I played at the service, one of Mrs. Chen's favorite pieces, a gentle Bach prelude that she'd always said sounded like peace. After, at the reception, David pulled me aside. She left you something, he said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a letter in Mrs. Chen's shaky handwriting. My dearest Isabella, if you're reading this, I've gone on to whatever comes next. Don't be sad for me. I've lived a long, beautiful life, and the last years of it were made so much brighter by you. You came to me as a student, but you became my daughter. You needed a family, and I needed a reminder of why I taught music in the first place. Not just to teach technique, but to help people find their voice, their power, their truth. You found yours, and watching you become the incredible woman and artist you are has been the greatest joy of my life. I'm leaving you my piano. I know it's old and not as fine as what you deserve, but it's the instrument we shared for so many years. Every key remembers your fingers. Every note remembers your passion. I want you to have it, to keep creating beautiful things, keep playing, keep composing, keep living your truth. You owe the world nothing except the gift of your talent. You owe yourself everything: joy, peace, love, success, all of it. And remember, family isn't blood. Family is choice. I chose you, and you chose me. And that made us more real than any genetics could. And I love you, my girl. I'm so proud of you. And I'll be watching from wherever I am, cheering you on like always. Your Mrs. Chen. I cried reading it. Then I had David's help to move Mrs. Chen's piano into my apartment, where it took up most of my living room. I didn't care. I'd practice on that piano for the rest of my life. The grief was hard. Losing Mrs. Chen felt like losing gravity. Suddenly, I was unmoored, floating, unsure. But I kept working, kept composing, kept performing, because that's what she would have wanted. A week after the funeral, I got a call from my mother. Isabella, I heard about your piano teacher passing, she said, her voice gentle. I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you. I know she meant a lot to you. She meant everything to me, I corrected. She was my family. Pause. We're your family too. Are you? I asked, not unkindly. You share my genetics. But Mrs. Chen shared my life. She showed up. She cared. She made me believe I deserved to take up space. That's family. I know we failed you, Mom said, her voice breaking. I know we can never make up for the years we missed, the moments we lost. But Isabella, you're 22 years old. We still have time. We could still try. I looked at Mrs. Chen's piano, at the photos of us together on my wall, at the life I'd built without them. Maybe, I said finally, someday, but not now. I'm still grieving the person who was there. I'm not ready to try with the people who weren't. Will you ever be ready? I don't know, I admitted. I really don't, but if that day comes, I'll let you know. That's all I can ask, she said quietly. I love you, Isabella. I know I didn't show it right, but I do. I believe you, I said. But love isn't just a feeling, it's action. It's showing up. It's being there. And I'm still learning how to trust that from you. After we hung up, I sat at Mrs. Chen's piano and played until my fingers were sore. Every note was a thank you. Every chord was a goodbye. Every measure was a promise to keep living the life she'd helped me build. 5 years later, I was preparing for the premiere of my first opera. It would debut at the Metropolitan Opera House, the youngest composer they'd ever commissioned for a full-length work. The opera was called First Days, and it told the story of a girl finding her voice, her power, her family. It was, of course, my story. The day before opening night, I was in my apartment going over the score one final time when my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door to find Cassie standing there. She was 19 now, in college, and she looked nervous. "Hi," she said. "I know I should have called. I was in the city, and I thought maybe we could talk." I hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in." She looked around my apartment, at the piano, the photos, the scores spread across every surface. "This is amazing," she said. "Your place, your life, everything you've built." "Thank you." She sat on my couch, fidgeting with her hands. "I know I don't have the right to ask this, but can I come tomorrow? To your premiere?" "Why?" I asked, not unkindly. "Why does it matter to you now?" "Because I'm trying to be better than Mom and Dad were," she said quietly. "Because I realized a few years ago that I was following their pattern, only showing up when it was convenient, only caring when other people were watching. And I don't want to be like that." "What changed?" "I went to therapy," she admitted. "Started dealing with my own stuff. Realized how messed up our family was. Realized how badly we treated you. And I decided I wanted to try to fix it, even if it was too late." "It might be," I said honestly. "I know, but I'm trying anyway. I've been following your career, every performance, every commission, every achievement. I'm proud of you, really proud. And I know I don't deserve to be there tomorrow, but I'm asking anyway, please." I studied her, this sister who'd been a stranger for so long, who was trying maybe to become something more. "You can come," I decided. "I'll leave a ticket at will call under your name." Her face lit up. "Really?" "Really, but Cassie—" "I know," she interrupted. "This doesn't fix everything, it's just a start. If there even is a start." "Yeah," I agreed, "if there even is." Opening night was perfect. The opera was 3 hours of music and story and emotion. The audience was silent throughout, hanging on every note. When the final curtain fell, the applause was thunderous. 20-minute standing ovation, flowers filling the stage, calls for the composer. I came out from my bows, overwhelmed and grateful and alive. I looked out at the audience and saw David and Rachel, now in their 60s, but still showing up for me. I saw my friends from Juilliard, from the music world, from my life. I saw journalists and critics and industry professionals, and I saw Cassie in the third row, crying and clapping. I didn't see my parents. They either weren't there or were sitting so far back I couldn't spot them. Either way, it didn't matter. This moment was mine. At the reception afterward, Cassie approached me cautiously. "That was incredible," she said. I don't even have words. It was beautiful and heartbreaking and triumphant all at once." "Thank you for coming," I said. "Thank you for letting me—" She paused. "I know you probably know this, but Mom and Dad tried to get tickets. They were sold out. They're outside waiting, hoping to see you. I didn't know if you'd want to know that." I considered. "I'll go talk to them," I decided, but brief and on my terms. "Of course." I found them outside the stage door, looking small and old and out of place among the well-dressed crowds leaving the theater. "Isabella," Mom said when she saw me, her eyes filling with tears. "Your opera. We heard people talking. They said it was extraordinary." "It was," I agreed. "We tried to get tickets," Dad added. "We wanted to be there." "I know, Cassie told me." Could we take you to dinner to celebrate?" Mom asked hopefully. I looked at them. These people who shared my DNA but not my life, who were trying now, 5 years too late, 10 years, 18 years too late. "Not tonight," I said. "Tonight is for the people who were always there, but maybe sometime, if you're willing to put in the work." "Work?" Dad asked. "Therapy," I said bluntly. "Family therapy, if I'm ever willing. Individual therapy for both of you to understand what you did and why. Real effort to understand me. Not the idea of me, not the successful daughter you can brag about, but me. My music, my life, my choices. If you're willing to do that work, then maybe we can try to build something." but it will never be what it should have been. That ship sailed when you missed my first day of school. Mom was crying openly now. We'll do anything. We'll see, I said. I'll be in touch, or not. But if I am, you have to respect my boundaries. You have to accept that I have a family already, one that I chose, one that chose me back. You have to understand that you're not the most important people in my life, and you might never be. We understand, Dad said, his voice rough. Good. I turned to go back inside, then paused. And for what it's worth, I'm not angry anymore. I've built a good life without you. A great life, actually. I just need you to know that you don't get credit for that. It's mine. I went back inside, back to my real family, back to the people celebrating my victory. David wrapped me in a hug. Rachel kissed my forehead. Cassie, hesitantly, thanked me for letting her be there. This is what family looks like, I told them all. This, right here. People who show up, people who stay, people who care. Thank you for being my family. Always, David said, echoing his mother's promise from years ago. Always and forever. That night, after the celebrations ended, I went home to my apartment, to Mrs. Chen's piano. I sat down and played the first piece she ever taught me, a simple Bach minuet that I'd struggled with at age 7. My fingers found the notes effortlessly now. Decades of practice, of discipline, of dedication. Decades of being seen and valued and loved for exactly who I was. I thought about that 4-year-old girl on the front steps, waiting for someone to take her to school. I thought about that teenager practicing piano until her fingers bled. I thought about that young woman giving her valedictorian speech to an audience that included her real family. They'd missed my first day of school. I'd never told them about my last. And in between, I'd built a life extraordinary enough that it didn't matter anymore. I played until dawn, grateful and whole and free.